Amigos, bienvenidos a Estepona, España, al lado de Marbella, la Costa del Sol. We are here to drive this, the 2016 Volvo V90. Now, for the avoidance of doubt, I am incredibly excited to drive this. And notice, it is not some British sports car built in a shed by two guys where it leaks when there's 2 drops of rain. It is a station wagon, an estate car, or as my dear rocket scientist father used to call these things, a pig fair car. So while we work on the full first drive review, let's you and I go through a tech review, and let's start where we always start, the engine. Okay, so this is the point of the episode where you need to bust out your notebooks because there's a lot of moving parts going on here, and I don't just mean pistons. Basically, you can get anything you want as long as it is a 4-cylinder, 2-liter direct-injected engine. Now, there is a diesel on offer, but sadly, that is not going to be making the transatlantic journey. So let's discuss the Bly-Fry options. So it starts with a T5. The T5 is a 2-liter, 4-cylinder direct-injected gasoline engine. Puts out 250 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. Comes in at a very low 1,500 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 4,400 RPM. Now, this one, turbocharged. So let's put that one aside. Then there is a T6. Now, if you have seen our full first drive review of the XC90, you're kind of familiar with this engine we're about to talk about, and that is, you guessed it, a 2-liter, 4-cylinder, direct-injected engine. But in this case, it adds a supercharger to the turbocharger. It puts out 316 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. The torque comes in at a bit of a higher engine speed, 2,200 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 5,500 RPM. But really what happens here is the supercharger is what provides boost up to about 3,500 RPM, and then it hands off to the turbocharger above 3,500 RPM. Now, let's put that aside and take a wild guess. What engine is in the T8? Now, just kind of a hint advice here, I did speak to the Volvo engineers. Sadly, we are not going to be driving a T8 on the coming full first drive reviews of these cars. We're going to have to come back to you at a later point with that. But let's just talk in the XC90, because they didn't give me the exact numbers for the T8 of the V90. In the XC90, it's 316 horsepower that comes out of the same engine that's in the T6. But remember, there's an electric motor in the rear that drives just the rear wheels. That's really the all-wheel drive portion of it. And that adds an additional 177 pound-feet of torque. So the total system horsepower is 400 horsepower and 472 pound-feet of torque. But what's interesting there, you don't get it all at the same time. And definitely check out our T8 episode in the XC90 that we drove to kind of understand that. So let's put all of this aside. And let's focus on the bits of how we get this power to the wheels and driving dynamics. So do you guys remember back to our Volvo XC90 episodes? We talked about something called a scalable product architecture. And that is something very similar to the Volkswagen Group MQB. And what it is, it's a way of building cars with different pieces that make up tool sets or toolkits. So don't think of it as stampings or a platform. It's bits that can be made in the case of a TT, a front-wheel drive based car, or the same bits can be used to make a large rear-wheel drive car or, say, a station wagon. So Volvo has used the same type of approach in building their architecture. So, for example, here, the front is a double wishbone setup here, and in the rear is a transverse composite leaf spring. That's like Corvette type of technology. And just as an aside here, the wheels, can I just say they look incredibly cool, not fitted as standard on any version of the V90. Those are accessory wheels. And it kind of harkens back to the old 850R, or if I'm dating myself here, a 242 GT, the turbo model. It's kind of the same look in this turbo fanned wheel. Anyway, let's put aside the aesthetics. So putting aside all of the architecture piece, the thing that impacts a car like this the most in terms of driving dynamics is dimensions. This is a very large vehicle. You don't get it in terms of like pictures and video. You got to see this thing in person to get an understanding of really how big it is. But in terms of numbers, the length, 195.4 inches, not short at all. The wheelbase, 115.8. But there are some differences in the S90, the sedan, to the V90. So effectively, it's actually about an inch shorter. It's an inch shorter about here. The height is about 2 inches taller, but there's a visual design trick going on here. You look at this and you would say, this thing looks incredibly sleek, and the reason why it looks sleek is because it's long and it's low. If you were to like stack this up against like an E-Class wagon, the E-Class wagon would sit about here as opposed to here. That is the visual trick. There's another thing going on back here where the width of the tailgate is actually more narrow by an inch than the opening of the trunk in an S90. Okay, so now that we've covered all of the driving dynamics bits, now we've got to focus a little bit on some technology on the inside. Okay, on the inside, there's a bit of the XC90, and then there's a bit of a totally new direction here. Now, if you remember in the XC90 episode, I waxed on poetically about the design of the interior, because frankly, I feel that is the most groundbreaking part of that vehicle, and that's a big function of Tish and her team. She runs interior design at Volvo. And really what they did here is they took a lot of the bits, like the infotainment system, the stunning speaker grills, the Bowers & Wilkins speaker grills, but they've done the same design trick on the outside where it's long and low. They've lowered the height of the dash and made it appear wider. We'll spend more time talking about this in the full first drive review and really how it works on the road. But there's a couple of things I do want to point out here. First and foremost, this is the first Volvo that we're going to drive that is fitted with Apple CarPlay. And number two, this treatment here in the rear. So think about this. This is an estate, a pig fair car, whatever you guys want to call it. So you can have more people in the rear. So you've got this HVAC system here in the controls, very similar to the way they had it in the XC90. But then they also have a charge port back here, but not USB. It's like an old school regular wall charger. Now this car is a Euro market car, so it has like the round plugs. But in the US, it'll be a regular 110 outlet. This is a nice little touch back here. Now let's put aside this, because we really have to focus on the business end of a pig fair car. And now, an admission. If I'm honest, this is the part that I am most excited about. And I understand the irony in this because, you know, we're car guys and gals. We get excited about sports cars or like German hot rods with entirely too much horsepower, but usually not the ass end of a pig fair car. And then really that is a commentary on what happens, at least in the US, where most people buy crossovers and sport utility vehicles, which makes this rare, which is why it's cool. So let's put that aside and let's get back to the business end here. Now, we already discussed that the opening of this tailgate is actually more narrow than the opening of the trunk on the S90. It's about 2 inches difference. Now let's open her up. There are a couple of tricks going on here. Trick number one, remember in the Mercedes-Benz GLC, where you put the seat down with a button here? Well, this got kind of the same trick, but in the case of the GLC, it moves the seat, the front seat, forward to allow it to fold flat even with the headrest. So let's try that trick here. On the right side, notice 60-40 split. Goes flat, no problem. But then on the left side, I've got the seat where I would do it, doesn't fold all the way flat because the headrest doesn't either fold or the seat doesn't go forward either way. Something I would definitely like to see changed. Now, a couple of other things going on here. This one's got this mat here, which is very cool. And the mat, basically, this car's got a lot of accessories on it, so this is one of these things that was been added to it. Other than that, there's some like storage down here, which is like one open piece. And a very neat little trick there where you can pull the whole thing out. And then another little trick, and this one is probably my favorite. Open sesame. Open sesame. There you go. A trailer hitch. It's even got the thing here where you get the little plug on the side here. Not something, well, it's kind of shy as you can see. Not something that I would probably use on a regular basis or really use this to tow, but it's nice to know that you could. So with that, let's focus on what we have here as a pig fair car. So in summary, what do we got? Well, I think I've been rather transparent that I am incredibly excited to drive this, but what I haven't been transparent about is I'm a bit biased. You see, I grew up on Volvos, so I have a bit of a soft spot in my heart for Volvos. So with that, I want to leave you guys with a question. And it's not the usual, would you choose this or that, because I know you would choose this. The question is actually more of a trivia question. So way back in the day of like the 700 series Volvos, there of course was the Peugeot, Renault, Volvo V6, but there was also a turbo diesel engine that actually did make it to the US. My question to you is this: who manufactured that turbo diesel engine? And you know what, for good measure, don't just give me the answer of who, but tell me your Volvo story. Like, did you grow up on one, or did you have one, or was it your first car, or something like that? Let me know in the comments below, or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with two things. Number one, make sure you download our fancy new mobile application, which you could download for free at Apple iTunes or Google Play. And number two, I want to leave you with a fun fact. Once again, my Volvo history here. So Volvos are known for a lot of things. Yes, safety and like very comfortable seats that are supportive, and in this case, very cool wheels. But way back in the day, they were also known for audio systems. So like in the 700 series, the 800 series, who manufactured the audio systems for Volvos? The answer? Alpine. Until I see you next time, bis später.